success in most areas that matter is almost always a game of outlasting. That's almost always what it is. It's a game of outlasting. It's outlasting how long you thought you'd have to do something. It's outlasting what other people are doing. It's outlasting. And it's just it's consistency.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the WIT podcast. You are going to love this episode. If you are an educator, a parent, a student, someone interested in going against the traditional approach to education, then this is the episode for you. We have a special guest with us today, Matt Beaudreau, and we're diving into the work that he's doing at the Apogee schools and the mentorship programs that he's a part of. We also get to have a chance to meet a very special guest host. This was a fun one because he is a young man who went through the Apogee program, and he got to ask Matt questions today. We've got some things that I know and you're going to want to write down and remember and then apply right away, because remember, here at the WIT podcast, it's about doing. So taking action and doing WIT in your life. So here you go. Enjoy this week's episode. All right, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the WIT podcast. For the audience, those listening and watching, this is the first time that Matt and I have had a chance to actually connect face-to-face and have a conversation. When I was putting together the guests for this season of the podcast, I made this very deliberate decision where I said, I just want to talk to people that I want to learn from. And I know for sure that if I do that, then I know you will learn something from them. Because I find myself to be somebody who's very curious, inquisitive. I know that those listening and watching are also those kinds of people. So I went on a limb and thought, if they're interesting to me, they're going to be interesting to you. So buckle up, because this conversation is going to be valuable. And before we dive into that, I have a very important question to ask you, Matt. Are you doing today what you thought you'd be doing at 16 years old?
Absolutely not.
Okay, tell us more.
Absolutely not. So yeah, no, it's 16. I thought if anything, there was very little thought into the future unless it involved sports or girls, right? At 16, to be frank, there wasn't a lot of future thought. There just wasn't. So if anything, I would have said some sort of law enforcement. Likely would have been something I'd have thrown out there at 16, but that was more a product of I grew up in a law enforcement household and knew a lot of law enforcement officers and liked law enforcement TV and was always a combat athlete. And so, that's where I thought maybe I'd go. And I did go through the background process with the Secret Service and was offered a job out at the White House, which I ended up turning down and never went the law enforcement route. But so no, ma'am, I had no idea that I'd be doing what I'm doing here.
Actually, I feel like I need to ask about the Secret Service gig. Why'd you turn it out? Why did you turn away from it?
It was a current Secret Service agent who talked me out of it.
There you go.
Yeah, he talked me out of it. So it was something that, and even that was really a product of I didn't know myself or what I wanted to do. I had made a nice, healthy career out of being a great student. I mean, that's what I always was. But I was a great student because I figured out the game of school. And so I was in the process of, getting all my straight A's in college, because I'd always gotten all my straight A's in high school. And senior year going, I don't know what to do. My senior year, 9/11 took place. And so I was like, okay, maybe I need to go back to this law enforcement. Do I want to go military? I don't think I want to go military, so maybe I want to go the law enforcement route. And then I saw a movie with Wesley Snipes called Murder at 1600. And I went, ooh, Secret Service. I don't know. Let's check that out. And so I put an application in. So my entire senior year, I was going through the background process there and was offered. So I just 2 months away from graduation, they said, you just got to get your bachelor's degree and then you'll be heading on out here to DC, or, the training was in like Georgia or something like that. And Secret Service agent that was current said, that's great. Congratulations. He's a friend of a friend. Let me tell you why this is a bad move and why you'll sacrifice your integrity. And I don't think you actually want to sacrifice your integrity. So a long 3-hour conversation took me out of it. Kudos to him, and kudos to those who do listen to those that have come before them and again, this isn't a pat on the back here, because there was an element of panic that happened in there too. I'll be completely honest, as a 21, 22-year-old young guy, I didn't know what to do at that point. But I'm grateful that I dove into the ambiguity that took place because of that too, right? Because it was like, oh, wait a second, I've had this clear path of school. Then you go into college and you get this clear path of do well in college. And that clear path is going to lead to the clear path of a career that's going to make a clear path of the perfect life, right? Like that's the bill of goods that everybody sold. And so when I turned that down right on the cusp of graduation, I essentially was saying, okay, now what? And I was having to own that and adapt to that too, which I'm grateful that I did, obviously, but that can be hard. It can be hard for people. I understand that can be a very difficult thing for people.
But I think it'd be really valuable for people to hear how you navigate gray or ambiguity, because I don't think that's something that we give tools for.
It isn't something that we get a lot of tools for, culturally speaking. And I always say people would rather have guaranteed slavery than ambiguous freedom, because at least you know what you're going to get, right? I use this I don't even remember how this popped into my head, but I had this visual the other day that I was talking to some of our men in our men's program about, and I'm like, it's, we got guys, they're in this cage, and they know they're in a cage, but there's a jailer, and the jailer looks just like them, by the way, and the jailer just comes and delivers this stale bread every single day, and the keys to the cage are right outside the cage. All they've got to do is reach out there and get it, but they know they're going to get their stale bread. They also know that if they have the guts to unlock the cage, they can see out a window, and there's this escalator that's going up, and they've heard at the top of that escalator, it's all you can eat buffet, baby. Like there's everything up there, but you got to keep running up. Like there's work involved. You got to keep running up that, and you can't see it. You've heard it's up there, but you're like, oh. And so what do people normally choose? They choose the sure thing. The sure thing is to stay right there and get their stale bread every single day. And that's kind of the nature of humans, is to just go, what is the thing that I think is sure, even if I can recognize that I'm somewhat chained, right? I think it was Harriet Tubman was quoted with it. I don't know if she actually said it or not, but I remember seeing this attributed to her, where she said, I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if they'd only known they were slaves. And I think that really lays out the human condition. So as far as dealing with that, I really think there's two things that are wildly important that we try to impart on anybody that we're working with, and it's self-awareness and self-confidence. Those two things are always the quote unquote curriculum for any programs that we lay out there, right? Self-confidence. I really like my friend Alex, his definition of self-confidence. He says, it's a stack of proof behind you. It's an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. I really like that. So you've actually done some hard things. You pushed yourself through it. You found yourself coming out on the other side. And the more of those experiences that you have, you can look back and go, okay, cool. I did something kind of tough right there. I did something kind of hard, and I stuck to it. I said I wanted to do something, and then I did it. I committed to it.
Keeping your word, friends. It's when you keep your words to yourself.
Bingo.
That's where the confidence starts to increase.
Exactly right. When you say this is what I want and this is what I want to do, and then your actions align with that, I always say you're deserving of the respect. It's an inverse amount. It's inversely proportional to the how far away your words and your actions are. So your words are here and your actions over here, and there's this huge gap. Well, the amount of respect that you've earned is inversely proportional to that. So it's about nothing. But if you put those two things on top of each other, man, then that's, everybody in the world is going to respect that. So self-confidence is earned that way, but self-awareness is earned through those kind of experiences too, because every time you take that risk, or you make that move, or you tackle that experience, or if you pay attention, you'll get some sort of feedback. How did I feel? How did this work? How did this person respond? What happened? Because you start to see these patterns, and the ability to see patterns play out because you do more, it becomes a superpower of self-awareness. So it's those two things. At this point, I'm confident that it doesn't matter where things go. I'll figure it out. And because I've got a history of doing so. But again, that's got to be earned.
I think let's stay here with the self-confidence, because we have people listening that are teenagers. We have people that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and they're going to go through or they're currently going through moments where their confidence is low and they think it will get better and it will increase if fill in the blank happens, or if so-and-so says fill in the blank, that all of a sudden, and they're waiting on that external. And like I just shared with you, I believe self-confidence is built when we keep our word to ourselves. And I want to break down just examples of that for them, because it's little things for me. And then I'd love to hear yours around. I've been doing this thing where I wake up at 5 o'clock and I said I was going to do it. I'm going to tell the audience, I probably said I was going to do that for a solid couple of weeks and I didn't do it. And then every night when I went to bed, I told myself I'm going to do it tomorrow, and I didn't. And then that feels really crappy. It just does. Full stop. Started doing it. I'm telling you, like day 2, day 3, I was on fire. And nobody was patting me on the back for doing it. Nobody was coming up to me at 5 a.m. while I'm doing my prayer time or my work and saying, so proud of you, Sarah, for doing that. But I did it. I finally did what I said I was going to do. So if you're listening or you're watching and there's something, you know what it is that you've said you're going to start or you're going to do, it could be as little as, like I just said, what time you're getting up in the morning. Build it that way. Give some examples that you can, Matt.
Well, and that's exactly it. So it doesn't have to be big, right? It's the consistency, it's the daily habits, because we have this internal, it's built into our DNA. We have this internal contract with each other or with ourselves that, we're going to, we want to go get things done, and we're not going to be happy with ourselves unless we're doing that. And I hear it a lot, like, especially from some of the men. They'll go, gosh, I have a tendency to overthink things. So I overthink it and I overplan it. And so then you don't overthink, you underact. Right. And there's a vastly different deal. Take the step forward and do it. So we talk about daily habits with our, and specifically with our adults, but it's something we're trickling down into our young people too. Like, what are the daily habits that if you've done them daily, they all will move the needle forward in areas of your life that matter, but simultaneously, you'll have these experiences that come from them, and that'll give you those patterns and that self-awareness. And most importantly, what you just said, these little tiny things, it turns into a confidence builder. So it doesn't have to be big things, and it doesn't have to be a million things, but like daily habits for us of reaching out to somebody in your network, just telling them that you appreciate them and they're a good human. Right? Like we do, that's a daily thing that we do, just somebody network, and it's a quick 30. It takes me 30 seconds to reach out to somebody, just leave a voicemail. Hey man, I reached out to Brian Callen this morning. I'm just like, hey, you're a good man. I appreciate the way you show up in the world. You're a phenomenal human. Comedy, yeah, that's great. I know you're a better father than anything else. So thank you for being that. Boom, done, all set. Right. And I do it every single day. So I earn confidence there. The relationships with my wife, the relationships with my children, making sure there's an intentional time every single day where I connect one-on-one with each one of them, just to make sure they know, hey, they are valued. And sometimes that's like a post-it note that's specific just to them, that I just stick somewhere, that they're going to every single day without fail. I'm going to have some sort of physical movement every single day without fail. There's not just some crazy workout, but sometimes it's just, I'm an old man now. So sometimes it's just mobility, right? It's like, that's great. I'll get some of that out of the way, but it's every single day. Checking on my finances is a habit now with every single, it doesn't mean like getting wrapped up. It just means checking, making sure everything looks good. Everything's like, cool, sweet, sounds good every single day. Like it's these little things, so that no matter what happens during the day, I go lay my head down at night. I know I showed up, I did all the little things that needed to get done. And even if the whole day went unplanned and crazy, I still move the needle forward on things that matter most every day. And you can't, you can be cocky without doing that stuff. You can't fake confidence. Confidence has to be earned. And it's those little things that earn it. And then when you look back and go, ooh, I've done this. I just do this now. It's like brushing my teeth. Like okay, I show up, right? I show up in the world. You have to earn that.
I love those examples because I think is something that everyone can do that's listening. These
Yeah.
are little examples. I'm not hearing Matt say, I wake up at 4 a.m. and I do an hour of hardcore working out, and then I do an hour of journaling about this, and then an hour. These are little things, and I love to hear this. Like, again, this is the first time Matt and I've chatted. It's just, I'm so aligned with that when we do little things, they add up, and it's the little actions done consistently that get the big results. But you can't just jump to the big thing right away.
That's exactly right. And what happens is people will try to jump to the big thing to make up for lost time. And so they'll go, and look, some of the big things, they'll go run a marathon, or they'll go, awesome. Congratulations. That's fantastic. That is not substitute for a little bit of a run every single day. Like, it's not a substitute for that. It's people confuse intensity with efficacy, and efficacy comes from that intentionality over the long haul. Most success in most things. And I don't, success is subjective and can be defined, but success in most areas that matter is almost always a game of outlasting. That's almost always what it is. It's a game of outlasting. It's outlasting how long you thought you'd have to do something. It's outlasting what other people are doing. It's outlasting. And it's just it's consistency. That's the golden calf for most people. It's consistency.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, but I want to stay on this idea of moving the needle. I know I'm not even going to say you're trying to, you are moving the needle in the space of education, but let's let people know what it is that you're doing and how you're spending your days now, because it's not what you thought you were going to be doing at 16.
No, not at all.
But I mean, I'm just, this is going to sound so cheesy, but you are protecting people. Yes, you are serving. I mean, you were going to go into law enforcement, but you are actually a man that's leading and serving and protecting his community. So I'm going to try to draw that connection there.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm grateful for the way that I get to do it now. And I believe I'll get to impact far more people. I already have, I believe, far more people this way too. I just realized the Eagles albums in the back too. I love all those albums too, right there. So
yeah, I intentionally pick albums behind me for my guests.
That's awesome. No, you nailed it. So yeah,
that's good. Okay, good.
One of my top songs of all time is in that album that's literally right over your head, right behind you. Take It to the Limb is one of the best songs on the planet. So,
and this is not planned, everybody. It's not planned.
No,
I pick my album. I pick the albums. They don't know, and they show up, but they are deliberate.
No, you nailed it. So yeah, I guess I'll give kind of the high level of all of what we're building and how it all kind of works together, and then we'll know where to go with it. So, we say at Apogee we exist because we are reseeding sovereignty and freedom for families by disrupting education. Like, that's what we're after, is a collaborative effort to instill the foundational, what we think is foundational to being an educated human, and it's the ability to be sovereign. That's the overall mission. So we've got what I call a number of fingers just on that same hand of sovereignty. So we've got our young men's mentorship program. That's where it all started. So I had been building out schools and I say schools because that's what people know where young people go during the day. They were anything but schools. They were, centers for leadership, centers for education. You can call them whatever you want, but it didn't operate like a school. But I'd been building those out for a long time in California, helped Tim Kennedy to get his up and running in Texas. And as we were talking together, we just went, man, we have so many young men that we still see are struggling, even in these schools that we're building. Like, there's these young men that don't have leadership around them 24/7. Like, what could this look like if we would utilize the networks that we have? Because we're all connected to some amazing, we're both connected to amazing men. How do we pour into these young men? So we built this mentorship program for young men, and then that slowly started to expand. So the mentorship program for young men, we had so many fathers that were just like, hey, by the way, would you ever do this for men? Like something that's similar in this nature. So we built out our mentorship program for men, and we went to the women, and now we're developing for the young women. We developed a home education program. So we've got about 250-ish families that we bring through home education, showing them how to educate at home, not bringing school home, how to educate at home. And we're on the precipice of the Apogee University, which will be coming within the next couple of years, which is fantastic. We are also launching 50 K through 12 campuses for young men and young women, boys and girls, across the US, Canada, and Australia this coming fall of 2024. I think we'll likely do another 100 in 2025. Now, those are tuition-based programs. What's the downside of any kind of privatized education? Well, you got to pay for it. And that's hard. And we understand that that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So we've also got the Apogee Strong Foundation and the Apogee Education Foundation. Those can take donations if people are really interested in helping, and we'll use those to help build the campuses, scholarship the young heroes. And we created a payment processing system called Apogee Pays that any business can use. If you're using something like Stripe or whatever, you can switch over to this, and that margin where Stripe makes all their money and uses it to push an agenda that's not necessarily in line with our values. Well, that money goes into the Apogee Strong Foundation, so we can scholarship young heroes. So all of this is what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
I want to really talk about the young men and the mentorship of that and the focus on that, because obviously I'm a woman, and there's lots of programs out there for young girls. I mean, I've been around long enough to have seen a big movement around supporting young girls and girls in STEM and girls leadership and all of that. Okay, so that's fine and that's great. But I was a classroom teacher, and so I taught boys and girls. And our young, it was so obvious to me that our young men, our young boys, aren't getting the kind of support that they need. And it was almost like it went from society was like, oh, the guys are good, the boys are good, now we're going to go like triple down on the girls. And then what ends up happening, at least what I saw, was that our boys are flailing. And our boys, this is just, you can come for me in the DMs, everybody, I don't care, but the majority of boys learn differently than girls. That's just a fact. And if classrooms have been built to only work for girls, then that's not helpful. So that's what I experienced as a teacher. My classroom was not a traditional classroom, and hence the reason I'm not a public school teacher anymore. And I left teaching 15 years ago to create my own thing, because I know what I did worked, but they didn't like it. So anyway, I think it's so important to talk about why our young boys need programs and need support. But I think you can do a better job telling people why that's a good focus.
Well, the young men need a roadmap. So we were talking about earlier about self-confidence being built through actions, right? We're talking about the keys to freedom being the self-confidence and the self-awareness. But we are in a world that distracts young men from ever really taking on the things that they earn those qualities with. So what we are doing is we've built out a roadmap, and this isn't a roadmap because this is the thing all young men need to know, and this is when they need to know it. No, it's a roadmap of experiences that when the work is put in, they get the self-confidence, and then they also get the self-awareness to go, ooh, here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm not that good at, here's what I want to get better at, here's how I can connect to somebody who may be better at this than I am, and how I can build. So they start to see these things that actually transfer into the real world, right? They're a focus on what we call meta skills. They're the skills that no matter what, this is always going to serve me. It's always going to serve me well to have self-confidence and have self-awareness. It's going to serve me well to be able to communicate with another human, to be able to articulate what it is I believe, why I believe it, to be able to change my mind if better evidence is presented, to be able to identify logical fallacies, to be able to dive into philosophical conversations, to be able to genuinely listen to somebody else without getting emotionally wrapped up if they maybe disagree with me, to be able to know where to go to find information that I need, and how do I start to apply that information, and then how do I adapt when all of a sudden the world changes and I don't have any control over that, but something I was really fond of is no longer relevant, right? I can't work at Blockbuster anymore because it doesn't exist, right? So that adaptability. So like, what are those meta skills? Hey, by the way, physical health and being able to be physically healthy, because that's the precursor to mental health, especially for young men, right? Like, why don't we make sure they understand all those things, have a grasp on those, and they own those as part of their DNA? So that's the premise of it. So they've got very specific roadmap to follow that are all experiential things that help cultivate that. Now, there are books associated with those activities, and there is a support network around them. Other young men, good men, including some of the most friggin' famous men on the planet who are also really good men, who come in and pour into them on a daily and weekly basis, depending on which category of the men we're talking about. So it is quite literally a roadmap to understanding all those things for them with a support network like no other. That's really how it's built, and as they go through and experience those things, and they start to document their journey, they document everything they're doing in a digital portfolio that then opens up more doors for them, whether that's job offers, post-high school programs, universities, whatever that looks like. But more importantly, they can look back on that and they go, ooh, look at all these things that I've done. And the world can go, ooh, look at all these things that you've done.
So if a young boy goes to the program, 3 words to describe them after.
Yeah, it's 3 words to describe the young men who do the work.
Yes.
Because there's a difference.
Oh, I know.
Right. And I know, but that's the whole thing, right? How many people go to the gym but never get in shape because they don't actually go to the gym? Or outside of the gym, they're like, all right, I'll go to the gym. We all know the guy that's in there on the same Olymp. You've seen him every day for the last 5 years, and he's consistent. But gosh, nothing's actually changing. Well, what's going on outside of the gym, right? Krispy Kreme hasn't changed for him either. So it's the same sort of concept. It's there, and we're there to support. Are you going to be the one that shows up? So for those who do that, one of the biggest words to describe them is confident. And they've earned that confidence through the things they're doing, through the conversations they're having. I would say one of the other things is curious, which is a complete superpower. And most people get rid of that early on, right? They just acquiesce to whoever the faux authority is for the day. You just let me know what to do and when to do it. And I'm just going to let you have the pen to write the story of my existence. You let me know if I'm a main player, if I'm an NPC, like you just let me know, what am I? So they maintain that, they have the confidence, they maintain that curiosity. And then we'll stay with the C's, right? So confident, curious, and let's go with the third C, connected. They are connected in a way that is going to help them in perpetuity, meaning they are connected to really, really good men, really, really good humans that they can call on because they've cultivated relationships with them, and they can call on them to supercharge and kind of fast track whatever the next levels of growth look like. Because they've got people who are ninjas in these areas that they're connected to, where they can do a big giant leap forward instead of having to figure out things themselves. So I'd say those are three words right there.
It's my understanding that for young people to be involved in your school, the parents need to be invested as well. And then the parents are also doing a type of curriculum or programming. And I see that as parents as partners, but truly parents as partners, because that buzzword was used in my schools that I taught. Oh, parents are partners, parents are partners. Tell us why that was important to you to have that component to your education programs.
For us, because we operate so differently, because it is, it's got more of, campuses have more of a summer camp vibe. The young ones are, there's all this integration. There's an economy on campus. They're taking on all these projects. They're starting businesses. I've had multiple young people making tons of money, like in a real legitimate business. Yeah. I've had high school students who were working for corporations while they were juniors and seniors that were degree required jobs, making 6 figures while they're finishing their junior year. Like, it's just a vastly different approach, right? So we are very much talking growth mindset. We are very much talking a microcosm of the real world versus anything that looks like school.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking like that all day, and they go home to parents who are like, oh gosh, that's great. You made $5,000 today, but what about your algebra 2? Like, you've got to get into this, Jace. It's like, what the? There's
Yep.
a massive disconnect. So we want to make sure everybody is on the same page around the philosophy, so that it is a partnership. So that it is like, we don't have to waste time on the no, man, this is a relationship. That's why you date right before you get married, because you want to know, are we aligned? Are we seeing things the same? We're not going to agree on everything all the time. That's fine. But do we care enough about each other to go, okay, let's do this together. I'll help you be the best version of you. You help me be the best version of me. And we'll go do something pretty exciting because we're together and we can create this family, right? Like, it's the same thing with these families.
Mm-hmm.
So are you on board? And if you are, then understanding that the best way to educate a young person, we can do everything very well on our campuses. The best way to educate a young person, though, is for mom and dad to continue to push their own education forward, and then simply bring that child along. It's always the best way, right? And I mean, you are setting the baseline for normal for that young person, right? And you've always have been, and I try to get people to see it. I'm like, okay, what language do your kids speak? And they're like, English. I'm like, cool. Why do they speak English? Because we speak English. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's the norm. Why don't they speak Chinese? Because we don't speak Chinese. Exactly. It's exactly right. And by the way, you didn't send them to school to learn English. You just spoke. They started following your lead. They end up speaking. And now, if you all want to be more articulate, well, you as a parent need to get more articulate, use different language, use different metaphor, and then you can bring them along within that, and they're going to start to follow along. So you're setting the baseline for normal. So if we're talking growth mindset on campuses all day long, and they're going home to a home that has nothing to do with growth,
Mm-hmm.
we fail in comparison, as we should, because the parents are still the primary educators, but the young hero is the one that ends up losing because that level of growth mindset is not being matched, right? So we need mom and dad on that same page.
Give me some examples. Give us some examples of how you do that. I'll throw one out that I saw that I thought was cool. Is that they're reading the same books? Don't you have like a book club?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot, 100%. There's a lot of the same materials, a lot of the same books.
Mm-hmm.
Mom and dad are taken through the Apogee Man and Apogee Woman program, which is it looks like the young men's program, and also the young, with the young ladies as we're developing, it looks like that. So it's 12 specific months, very specific roadmap, some of the same books, same themes, just more intense on the mom and dad side, right? And so mom and dad are diving into their own personal psychology and diving into, Plato's concept of the forms and the alter ego effect by Todd Herman and sports psychology, and how does that apply to how I show up in the world, and eradicating soft language from my own, vernacular and from my own mindset, and like they're doing all that too. Oh, and hey, so are they over here. So now we all understand how tough this is to grow through this, but we can now hold each other accountable to do this, right? So now we're actually a team going through the same thing, right? So now, okay, we're both understanding what macronutrients look like and what does health actually look. It's not about just get your six pack. No, it's about what does health look like. Like, let's start taking a look. What are we eating? What are we staying away from? How is that impacting our health? Like, let's dive in and let's do it together as a family. And in that way, we get to actually truly partner on growth with everybody at the same time. We're all on a mission together.
You know what came up for me as you were saying that? I was reminded of times when I would meet parents that I could tell felt insecure because their child was passing them in their education, and even references of, because maybe the child is reading books that the parents never read when they were younger, or the education that the child is receiving is, quote, better than what they got. And I would sit in conferences, and I could tell that the rub was often the parent puffing up a bit to remind the child who's in charge, but really it was out of their own panic that their kid was passing them. And when you share what you're doing, I love that, because let's say the parent didn't read those books in school, because that's not that they didn't have access to that type of education or experience. Well, now who cares? They're reading it now, and so is the kid, and you're in it together, and all that mess, which I'm telling you, friends, it happens. It may not be happening in your home, but I've seen it happen so many times, where the power struggle of the home. And I think this could be an interesting way to address that.
It really is. It takes it from we grew up in and I say we like we're the same. I think I'm probably older than you, but we grew up culturally, in this do as I say, not as I do. And and I'm not saying that the parents don't have the, quote unquote authority in the home. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is most effective families look at things as a joint mission, not mom does this and dad does this, but the kids do this, right? When there is a joint mission, where everybody's on the same page together, there's a core set of family values. This is who we are. This is how we show up in the world. And by the way, if dad doesn't show up like that, kids, you can call him out because he needs to change, because that's what I want. I need to be the example, right? So if you see me not being an example, well, then now they believe that it's actually important, that that's actually real, because dad's not being hypocritical. And if dad's not being a hypocrite, then this must be how an adult needs to actually show up. So I need to show up that way too, right? That's when you have a joint mission like that. That's how things get accomplished for everybody, right? And then egos drop at that point because you realize it's actually okay. Guess what? Everybody I meet is better than I am at something. And I'm better than they are at something. That's universal. There's 8 billion people. That includes the 3 beautiful children that I get to raise in this house. So cool. Might as well accept that, and let's help them be really good at these things. And whatever I can pass along that I'm better at too. And by the way, some of it, they're not going to care because it's not going to matter for their journey. And, when you get all that out of the way and you can actually really internalize that, everybody's able to move forward. You can drop the ego a little bit and we can just enjoy the ride, man, because this whole education thing, this whole growth thing, doesn't stop until you either stop it or you're 6 feet under. Otherwise, that's the game of life, man. That's the long tail game we're playing.
I'll say to my adult friends that are listening that also grew up in the do as I say, not as I do, I know how hard it is to apologize and to admit a mistake in front of a young person when you want to just blow past it. It would happen to me as a teacher. And I remember moments where, because I had empowered these 35 students, built this family. We were a family. We used the word family to let me know when I wasn't upholding, because our motto was whatever it takes back then when I was teaching, and now it's, this organization. But when I wasn't living our character pillars, and they knew how to approach me respectfully, or I knew, like, let's say a kid came in and I said, let's pull out the homework on pages 49 to 52. And they're like, Miss H, you said it was 40 to 44. There's like this thing in you that wants to go, no, I didn't. Or, and when I'm telling you, the moment, the discomfort, this isn't going to be for everybody. This is only for the people that will relate to what I'm saying. That discomfort that you feel in that moment of being caught, in quotes, work through it, because nothing compares to the look on a child's face when you say to them, oh my gosh, Max, you're right. I'm sorry. Like I messed up, and thank you for letting me know. And then they get this feeling of like, oh, wait a second. Like we have to admit to her when we're wrong. And she's modeling that too. And I didn't really have that type of modeling in my life growing up. And so it wasn't always easy for me to do. And now I can do it. And it's not always easy for me, because sometimes I get caught up in not wanting to be, quote, wrong and all that. But try it, friends. Just try it, because it builds respect with your children, with your students, with your friends. So thank you for letting me remember that I was awesome. Reminded of that, Matt.
Very much so. And same kind of experience. And I think one of the most valuable things you can do if you do struggle with that, and you do struggle with, well, no, I just, it's a lack of respect, or whatever, call me out. If you have that kind of mindset, I would just encourage you to be brave enough to ask yourself why. Like, where did that come Is that real? What's the story you're telling yourself there?
Totally.
What's the story about the story? That's what critical thinking actually looks like, is thinking about your thinking. So why do you think that? Why are you owning that? Why does that get you so emotionally wrapped up?
Totally.
It's worth unpacking, man.
It's worth unpacking, and you can move through it. You can move through it. You can kind of fake it till you make it a little bit. It gets easier. Okay, now we're to one of my most favorite parts of the show, which is when we get to bring in a special guest host. And this special guest host is always included because we want to celebrate those that are doing WIT, living whatever it takes in their life. And sometimes we bring in WIT graduates, and sometimes we bring in people that are currently in our program. Today, our special guest host, who's going to be asking a few questions, is a student who has actually participated in the Apogee programs. This is extra special to me, and I wanted it to be extra special to Matt because I thought, why not connect with one of your students in this way, or participants in your way? So I'm going to turn the mic over to Malachi. He's got a couple questions to ask before we jump into our closing rapid fire questions. So Malachi, take it away.
Love it. How you doing, sir?
Awesome. I'm doing good. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you as well. Don't go easy on me.
Oh, well, in that case. So, going through the Apogee program, and anytime I've been able to hear you speak, whether that's on podcasts in person, you're very clear about your language when speaking about education and schooling, and, campuses versus schooling versus education. So in your words, what is the difference between schooling and education? And what do you mean when you talk about the game of school?
I love that. Really great question. So I'm very particular for a couple of reasons when I differentiate between school and education. One, I think culturally we have been trained that those are one in the same. When I tell people I'm an educator, they automatically go, okay, are you a teacher at a school? Are you a principal at a school? Like, it's automatic. And if you said something like, oh, my company runs personal development, they're like, oh, okay, so you're like Tony Robbins, you're like a motivational speaker, right? And I'm like, hold on a second. Education and personal development are the exact same thing. Education is simply growth. By the way, it's the natural state of a human being that we get trained to shut off. But if we didn't shut that off, if we retained what I call the factory settings, we would be in this constant state of curiosity, this constant state of, where can I grow? Where can I get better? How can I do this better? How can I get more efficient at this? What's the new skill I can acquire? Who can I partner with where we can put our skills together to create something new? We're by nature creators far more than we are consumers, but culturally we've been trained to consume. So what I mean when I'm talking about education is getting back to those factory settings of wanting to grow, wanting to create, wanting to share our creation and service to others. I believe that's the natural state of a human being that, again, just gets trained out of us early. Part of where it gets trained out of is, well, school. So school ends up being this very narrowly defined religion in my mind. And part of the reason I'm so specific on saying this is that is a tough thing for people to hear, especially if they are really good humans who are working in the system. And so part of the reason I'm so specific is because I am so supportive of good humans in the system. And I don't want them to hear my critique of a soulless system as a critique against them as an individual, because I believe in them. I believe in their heart. I believe what they are there to do is a special calling. I believe there are a lot of educators there. And by the way, the public school system, the conveyor, what I call the conveyor belt school model, is never going to go away. Since it's never going to go away, and since there are some young people who will never see better adults than those who are their teachers, I want there to be great educators there. I want there to be. But it doesn't mean I shouldn't create, again, education. It doesn't mean I shouldn't create what I think is a better alternative and better option. So for me, school is that very narrowly defined religion of every human being needs to know this exact thing at this exact time and be taught in this exact way. And how do we know it's a religion? Well, because if you don't do exactly what we say when to do it, We're going to tell you something is wrong with you. We're going to feed into your life. We're going to make sure your time is taken back. It's our time now. We may medicate you as well, just to make sure you're docile enough to pay attention to this, right? We're going to say it's because you have a methamphetamine deficiency, young man, and we're going to get you all hopped up so that you can focus on the boring ass. Like that to me is a religious practice. Education inherently involves that uniqueness of each individual. And it's this lifelong growth. So to me, those are two concepts that not only are they different, they really kind of fly in the face of one another, and they kind of clash. So that's hopefully that helps people. It's a great question.
It's almost like a cult, though. More.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even go even further. Like,
it's exactly what it is.
I'm like, I go cult over religion, or religion turned into a cult.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It is a cult.
Great question.
It is, and again, I brought so many people at this point, quite literally thousands of families that I've had the honor to work with over a couple of decades. And I can bring people through a logical sequence where they're like, yeah, okay, yep. That makes sense. That makes sense. And it's like, okay, cool. So are you ready to pull your, children out? But what do my mom think of me? What do my neighbors think of me? But I'm going to break my kid if they don't go to this place that doesn't mimic life. It actually sort of systemically mimics prison, and they don't regurgitate on a Scantron some, trigonometry. God, I'm going to ruin my kid. And it's like, cool. You see how far away those two things are? The logic versus the emotion. Mm-hmm. Well, what can get you emotionally wrapped up like that? A cult. Mm-hmm. You can't bring a person out of a cult with logic almost ever, because they still, even when you bring them out, they still want to do cult stuff. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you.
All right, next question, Malachi.
The next question actually relates to that. You talked about the idea of conveyor belt schooling, whether that's public, private, charter, whatever. And, thinking about how to educate yourself and continuing education, what advice would you have for somebody that's 17, 18, coming out of the conveyor belt schools as they go into life on how to continue their education?
Great question, Malachi.
Yes, I love this question too. So first and foremost, I would want any young person coming out who's 17, 18. This is where some people would say, you got to go to college, or you got to go to this specific program, or you got to go. Please understand, all information of all time is available to you through the internet and the library. It's there. Like, it's all there, and it's really all there for free. So knowing that, you've got a lot, it's like this giant buffet, but that can be overwhelming too, because you're like, where do I eat first? If you know who you are, meaning you've got a core set of values and you've defined who you want to be, that will help you determine what to do. So let me say it a different way. When you get up every single day, instead of deciding, well, here's what I have to do today, decide, who do I need to be today? If you've defined the person you need to be, then you can go forward and do the things that you need to do, and you can start to make a choice. What's one of the things that we always say in the Apogee program? We say fire. Go ahead.
It's fire, aim, ready.
Fire, aim, ready, right? It's not ready, aim, fire. It's fire, aim, ready. What does that mean to us? It means you know who you are, you're centered in your principles, your values, and you've got something you think you might be interested in. Cool, take a step forward. What does that step forward look like? I don't know. It might mean reading a book. It might mean reaching out to somebody who is working in a field that you think is interesting, and seeing if you can connect. It might mean reaching out to 100 of those people to see if you get some feedback. It might be showing up to a business. It might be making a phone call. It might be putting yourself in a seminar. It might be, there's a million ways to get educated. So pick one and go forward. Take the step. So you fire by just walking into it and going, okay, cool. Here's what I'm going to start to tackle. And in the process of that, you'll start to learn some things. You'll start to go, okay, I do like this, or I don't like this, or I love this method of learning it this way, or I don't love the method of learning this way, but maybe if I try a different way, great. So now you're starting to aim, because you're taking the feedback from actually taking a step forward to now go, okay, maybe I'll go in this direction. And as you do that, every time you do that, there's other doors that are presented to you, and you're going to have to make more choices to walk through this door or that door, right? And so the whole ready thing, you never actually get there. You just keep going, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire, aim, until eventually you're creating in that arena more than you're consuming. And then maybe that's the ready, sort of phase. So that's how the game actually works. So when you know that that's the case, shoot, you got a lot of great options that you can take. Any of those options are options for education. So here's the other sneaky part. While you're doing this, you've got to focus on addition by addition and addition by subtraction. So we all know you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Okay, we all know that, but how much time do we spend actually cultivating that? So addition by addition means you've got to make sure that the 5 people you're spending the most time with are 5 people who are inspiring you to show up as the person you need to be every day. So like intentionally cultivating those relationships matters. By the way, you're also the product of the 5 ideas you spend the most time thinking about, the 5 conversations you have the most, the 5 books that you read the most, the 5 songs you listen to the most, the 5, intentionality around all those things matters. And then it's addition by subtraction too. What are the distractions, and who are the people that need to get cut out? Who are the homies and the bros that are dragging you down because they don't want to see you get better? They're the crabs in the bucket, right? Our friend Beaudreau talks about that all the time. They're the crabs that are going to try to yank you back down. Well, cool. If they're trying to yank you back down, we got to get rid of them. What else is a distraction? Well, video games can be a massive distraction. Endless scrolling, massive distraction. Like there's so many distractions, but I'll add a whole lot to my life by subtracting all of those. So it's a combination of all those things. And then if you're doing all that, well, yeah, it might lead you to a university. Great. If you can be intentional about it and do it, without going into debt, find a reason to, cool, sounds good. Maybe you'll find a post-high school program like Praxis. Phenomenal organization, phenomenal program. Great. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's working and studying and continuously connect. Like any of those things are fine. Those are all ways to continuously be educated. It'll open more and more and more doors. So the worst thing you can do is, well, I was going to say the worst thing you can do is nothing. I think the worst thing you can do is just doing the next thing that somebody else told you had to because they said you had to do it.
Mindless action.
Mindless action. Everybody says go to, which by the way, I did that, right? Everybody, same. I got my straight A's. What is everybody? I don't know. I guess I'll go to college. That's what everybody else says I'll do. So I'll go there. And the opportunity cost and the financial cost set me back not just 4 years. It set me back a whole lot more than that too. So, I wish there was a one thing to say, but that's the lie.
That's good though, because the listener and the viewer, you can ask yourself right now, what's one thing you can add and what's one thing that you can subtract in your life that will get you closer. There's things that you can do right now. So ask yourself that question. And while you're asking yourself that question, come up with your answer. I'm going to turn it back to Malachi for rapid fire questions.
All right. First one is, what is a book you would recommend for anybody you come in contact with and why?
Alter Ego Effect. It is the first book we ask our men and women to read. It is literally about redefining the stories you're telling yourself and deciding who the ideal version of you is going to be, and then plotting out exactly how to live that out. In a very similar vein, close second, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza.
Awesome. And the second question is, who is one person that inspires you and why?
I have, I have so many. I will say one that most people will know of, but won't have said this before. So Chris Gardner is somebody who inspires me. So there's a different, in terms of relationships, and words matter. So I'm talking purely inspiration here. Chris Gardner is somebody who inspires me. If anybody has ever seen the movie Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith played Chris Gardner in that movie. And I remember watching that movie, subsequently reading the book of Chris Gardner's life. I watched that movie prior to me ever having children. And I was so inspired by his story of doing whatever it took to make sure his kids were taken care of before I ever even had children, that I had committed at that point. I will do anything and everything to make sure that I am raising them to the best of my ability, and I will outserve and outparent anybody that I know. And so, even before I had them, I think that's a big reason I started the campuses that I started, because I'd already committed to it. So yeah, I'll go Chris Gardner.
Awesome. Now I have to go find out who Chris Gardner is.
Yeah, man.
And
have you ever seen Pursuit of Happiness?
I have not seen Pursuit of Happiness.
Highly recommended.
Oh, easy. Last question is, what does whatever it takes mean to you?
Ooh, I like that. What does whatever it takes me? It's what goes back to what we said earlier. It is the commitment to doing what I said I'm going to do. And nothing gets in the way of that. And I know there's going to be obstacles, and I know there's going to be detours. I know there is no substitute for consistent action. To me, that is whatever it takes. I will not miss a day, period, end of story.
Oh, thank you both for being here today. What a gift to have you both give your time to me, to our audience. I am frustrated that I don't have another hour with both of you, because I know we could continue to bring so much value to our listener and viewers. So we'll have to have you back at some point if you'll accept our invitation. Malachi, pleasure to have you. Pleasure to meet you. I'd like the people to know that I did not review questions ahead of time. I trust our special host to know how to put together questions, and you crushed it. So well done on that. Matt, where can they find you and learn more about your programs?
Appreciate that very much. So I'm most active just under my name on most things. Instagram probably most active there. So just at Matt Beaudreau, or however we want to say the last name, is great. ApogeeStrong.com, APOGEE strong.com is the best website. We're adding all of the verticals there. Updates should be good there shortly. And those are the best places. Those are the best places to go. Essential 11 podcast, if you want to listen to some of our amazing mentor calls that we release as podcasts as well. So those are all good places. And I highly recommend also diving into a young man named Malachi Duncan, who is a leader in every sense of the word. So go find that young guy too.
Fantastic. All right, everybody, wherever this finds you, I hope it finds you making it a great day and doing whatever it takes.